speaking of South Bend, we go there now, and the head coach of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, Brian Kelly, joins us. You've got your Domers all over the world here in football and the media. And Brian, it is an interesting time to say the least, for all the obvious reasons. Football is so all-consuming for head coaches. I'm wondering what this time has been like for you, given these unique circumstances.
Well, certainly, using the word different would be understatement. It has been, as head coaches, a way for us to really understand how we create the kind of routine and structure that we command every single day with 105 players under our thumb, if you will. But we now do it through Zoom meetings, and we do it through FaceTime, and we do it through, obviously, text messaging. So we've had to pivot. We've had to be creative. I think it's made us better for it. And I think in the long run, we're probably not going to be the same because of it, because I do believe that it's made us better in a sense that we can now create an environment for our players to be in a less structured situation because of this.
Brian, if you can explain for everyone what the lack of summer sessions, so many colleges have canceled their summer sessions, certainly on campus where there's some instruction online, what the impact of that decision is, and it's the right decision, of course. What's the impact across college football as a whole, not having players for summer session?
Well, I mean, it's going to impact, what that starting date is. And so the longer we get out, the more it becomes what that starting date looks like. So your football team is certainly not put in jeopardy from a physical standpoint. And I just don't mean skill development. I mean not putting a football team out there that is not in a cardiovascular position to compete at the highest level, is susceptible to soft tissue injuries, and really at risk to not be at its full capacity. So as we get longer into the summer, Mike, you'll start to see where this may have to push the start of the season back. I think it's conceivable for me, as long as we're in that early July window, we can get ready for a start of the season for where it is right now. Anything that pushes later into July and into August, we're going to have to make some adjustments. And I know Jack Swarbrick and I have talked about different models. There's the potential that we could start as late as October and still get our 12-game schedule in without bye weeks, and moving a little bit later into December because we don't play a conference championship. So without altering the schedule too far, if you just look at it as it comes up on the screen, if we started with Wisconsin on October 3rd and we went straight through the schedule and took the other games and didn't have the bye weeks, because there's 2 bye weeks in there, and then went 2 weeks later into December, we could conceivably get all of our 12 games in. So there's really a lot of time here, Mike, for us to work through the many things that are going to have to change, right? Testing being one of them. Still, there's going to have to be some modifications relative to the distancing and how we get fans into the game. So there's a lot that has to happen, because we're not just going to show up on July 1 and everything's back to normal. But I think we have plenty of time to be able to do that.
Right. We saw the schedule. Navy is the first game that was scheduled to be, and still is scheduled at the moment to be, in Ireland. Have conversations started about that game, and if that game might, in fact, not be able to be played overseas?
Yeah, certainly we can't wait until, June and July to make those kinds of decisions. So I know that Navy, it's their home game. They're already looking at different plans, Plan B, Plan C, Plan D, bringing it back on the mainland. We don't have to make that decision right now, but those discussions have to be taking place, because we have to have alternative plans in place if we get into May and June and we have to make those kinds of decisions. So again, it's Navy's home game. that kind of coordination needs to start taking place right now if in fact the game was not played overseas. But again, as you said, Mike, that decision hasn't been made. Works, moving forward, expecting and hoping to play that game in Ireland. But again, I think it's prudent to have other plans in place.
You mentioned Jack Swarbrick's the longtime outstanding athletic director at Notre Dame. Conversations are now going to start coming up about what you mentioned in one of your prior answers, Brian, and that's social distancing when it comes to fans. And will we have fans in the stands? What's your position on how essential or how important it is to have fans at these games if and when they get started in the fall?
I think it's part of college football. I think the fans and the collegiate atmosphere and students are part of college football. So I think they come back together. I think when you're conditioning yourself back out on campus, you can't be the only ones that are on campus. In other words, it can't be just that football is allowed to be on campus and nobody else can be there. I mean, eventually you're going to have students back on campus. That means they can be part of the games. So eventually this is going to have to be everybody's involved or nobody's involved. And I think, again, I think what I'd like to underscore is that there is great flexibility here in moving it, and we have time to come up with the things necessary. I know there's not been national plans rolled out, but I can tell you what the plans are here, and that there's got to be testing. There's got to be, obviously, a new way, a new normal, if you will. And those things will have to be in place before these games are played. And I'm confident that there are a lot of smart people that are going to be able to get this thing figured out.
I think you brought up one of the interesting points, Coach, that is not getting discussed as deeply in the college sports space. Look, we, for the most part, are consuming and discussing sports things with a lot of the folks we have on, so that's an obvious connection. But at the college and university level, it's very different. And getting to know the institution in South Bend over the last few years, Notre Dame works as closely with the entirety of the institution as any football program or sports program. And these decisions have to be made at the university level. It's nice to talk football and preparation of Ian Book, your quarterback, and all this other stuff. But the universities have to figure out a new future, a new reality where how are we going to get students back all using dorm bathrooms and dorm dining facilities? How is that going to be safe before we have kids back on campus? And that goes hand in glove with the conversation of when does football get started again?
Mike, you're so right. I think that, everything that we do at Notre Dame is centralized around this unification of, academics and athletics. And so it would be hypocritical if it's just about football. Yeah, we want to play. It's important. It's part of our DNA, but it's got to be one where we're gradually bringing everything back together as one. And that is, how do we open up the dorms? How do we get people employed and back on campus and, cleaning and all the frontline service people that have to be safe as well. So there's a lot here in front of us. But again, I think what's most important to know here is that we have time to get this in order before we begin playing football. And it doesn't have to happen on, August 29th. It can be a little bit later, and we have 3-4 months to work on this. But you're absolutely right. It is about student athletes. It's not just about, this is not we're rolling it out in an NFL fashion. This is about bringing our university back as well.
A terrific 11-2 season last year. Some players who are moving on to the next level to the NFL. Julian Okwara, outstanding defensive lineman. Chase Claypool, terrific receiver. Cole Kmet, maybe as good a tight end as there is in the country. Just some of those players. With the NFL draft coming up and the access for the teams being impacted, have you been fielding more calls from NFL teams asking about your players than you otherwise would?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, Mike. Some of the things are a little bit more in depth than we've had in the past. We're asking, obviously we're getting more information out to the scouts than we ever have in the past and GMs. we're getting information to them like GPS numbers. What's their work volume like? Things that they couldn't get when they were normally being able to work them out, and giving them, a hard, 20 to 30-minute workout. So they're asking for different information, a lot more science-based information they're looking for. And again, you mentioned 3 of those guys. We probably have 6 guys that are right now, based upon conversations that I've had with coaches and GMs, that are probably going to be drafted. And then we have another 6 guys that played prominent roles for us. The Chris Finks and the Jalen Elliott's of the world, Jameer Jones, to name a few, Tony Jones Jr. We probably have another 6 that are probably going to end up in camp. So 12 players off this team that are probably playing in the NFL. So you can imagine I'm getting a couple of calls once in a while.
No doubt. Let me just spin quickly as we wrap up to Notre Dame football, which we'll hopefully see sometime in the fall of 2020. Other schools are having to find their quarterback, which is going to make the lack of spring ball and the lack of all this build-up time even more challenging. For you have Ian Book coming back, and just your thoughts on what his growth and the Notre Dame offense might look like with former quarterback Tommy Rees, now your offensive coordinator.
Well, we had one spring practice, so I'm going to go off of that one spring practice. It was one of the best spring practices that I've had. So I'm just going to say, based upon one spring practice, 30 years of doing this, we're fine. We're going to shut it down. We're going to wait for Navy.
Good.
Yeah, exactly. He obviously, what he went through last year, and the good and the bad, has really changed the way he's taken the leadership role of this football team. And you really saw it in the lead up into the spring, the winter workouts. His presence was really what you want from a 5th-year quarterback. So feel really good coming back that Ian Book is in that position. And again, I don't think we're going to miss a beat with not having spring ball, knowing that nobody else has it too. I think that it
right,
won't be
exactly.
a competitive. It won't be a competitive disadvantage for us.
Always great catching up with you. We look forward to our Saturdays in South Bend as much as any time during our football season, during our entire year of covering sports. And we hopefully will be able to enjoy those this fall with what is an unbelievable Notre Dame home schedule on NBC this year. Brian, best to your family and to everybody there in South Bend. We look forward to connecting with you soon.
Mike, good seeing you, and the same to your family. And we'll look forward to what I'm pretty certain we'll see in the fall.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.